Welcome to the official channel dedicated to admirers of Sheikh Hamdan and the esteemed royal family of Dubai. Today, we dive into something truly special, a journey filled with emotion, poetry, and the unbreakable power of love and connection. Not long ago, Sheikh Hamdan took to Instagram to share a deeply romantic poem, penned from the heart, for Shama al-Falasi. His words were tender yet powerful, woven with vulnerability, devotion, and a poetic elegance that captured hearts around the world. And today, we're honored to present an English adaptation of that poem, followed by a moving story that echoes its themes of love, courage, and the healing power of human connection. Let us now transport you into a memory, an emotional turning point in a young man's life, one where love dared to enter the domain of tradition. It was a day unlike any other. The kind of day you anticipate with nervous hope, unsure of what might unfold. The young man had spent 8 precious months building a relationship with a woman who had not only captured his heart but had become an integral part of his world. She was intelligent, graceful, grounded, and today, she was going to meet his father. This wasn't just any meeting. It was the collision of two worlds. The quiet sanctum of his childhood home, ruled by a man of strict principles, and the free-spirited warmth of a woman who had never known the rigidity of such expectations. She arrived just before sunset, dressed simply but with elegance, her hair tied back in a neat twist, a small box in her hands. Inside was a homemade apple pie, lovingly baked using the time-honored recipe passed down from the young man's grandmother, a pie his father used to love in his youth. When she stepped through the threshold, time seemed to pause. The house, usually echoing with silence and formality, suddenly seemed alive. And the man's father, stoic, reserved, always guarded, stood at the door, momentarily caught off guard. The scent of the pie drifted through the air, thick with memories of a past he rarely spoke of. Something in him shifted. For the first time in years, the sharp lines around his mouth softened. He took the box from her hands, nodded silently, and led her into the house. Dinner was served in the same dining room where countless quiet meals had been shared in silence. But tonight, it was different. As the three of them sat down, an invisible curtain lifted between them. The pie sat at the center of the table like a peace offering. And slowly, stories began to emerge. Stories of a younger version of his father, dancing in the kitchen with his wife to the tunes of Fleetwood Mac, reading Agatha Christie by the fireplace, and laughing at jokes only she could tell. The woman listened intently, occasionally offering a gentle comment or asking a thoughtful question. She didn't try to impress, she simply was herself. And that was enough. With every shared memory, the father's guard began to lower. His deep voice carried nostalgia now, his smile uncertain but genuine. He looked at his son, really looked at him, for the first time in a long while, and saw not the boy he had raised, but a man shaped by love and strength. As the evening drew on, an unspoken test loomed. The father leaned back in his chair and asked, without warning, "What is it about my son that made you fall for him?" It was a question weighted with expectation, laced with challenge. The young man held his breath, ready to jump in, but she didn't hesitate. She reached beneath the table, took her partner's hand, and met the father's gaze. "I see in your son a man who carries the weight of others' expectations with quiet grace," she said. "I see someone who listens, not just with ears, but with his heart. Someone who celebrates my victories, no matter how small, and stands beside me when the world feels heavy. He is strong, but he's also kind. Fierce, but gentle. And he has taught me that love doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be true. The silence that followed was not awkward, but reverent. The father's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in appraisal. There was something in her tone, something sincere, unafraid. And for the first time in a long time, he saw his son through someone else's eyes. Later that night, after dessert and another round of stories, the father did something unexpected. As she prepared to leave, he stood up and offered her a warm, genuine hug, a gesture that even his own son had rarely received in adulthood. Then, as casually as one might comment on the weather, he said, "Join us next Sunday for dinner." It wasn't just an invitation, it was an acceptance. A quiet declaration that this woman, with her humility and honesty, had earned his respect. But the story didn't begin with that peaceful evening. His breath was shallow. Beside him, she reached over and rested her hand on his knee. "It'll be okay," she whispered. He wanted to believe her. But he knew his father, knew the man's sharp opinions, his traditional mindset, his tendency to wield words like weapons. He forced a smile and nodded. And then, with a courage born of love, he opened the car door and stepped into the unknown. In the weeks that followed, things began to change. His father began asking about her, what books she read, what music she liked. He requested her pie recipe. He smiled more, laughed louder, spoke kinder. One day, the young man found an old photo album sitting on the living room table, open to a page from decades past. His father, young and in love, smiling beside a woman who looked just like his mother. "She reminds me of her," his father said simply, without looking up. It was the highest praise he could ever offer. Sometimes, life offers us windows into the soul. Moments where past and present collide, and love finds a way to heal what time alone could not. She didn't change him. She reminded him of who he once was. And in doing so, she brought father and son closer than they'd ever been. So when Sheikh Hamdan shared his poem for Shama al-Falasi, filled with longing, hope, and reverence, it resonated so deeply. Because love, in its purest form, has the power to transform, to soften what's hardened, to heal what's broken, to remind us of who we are. And as always, we thank you for joining us on this journey of the heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories and exclusive updates on Sheikh Hamdan and the royal family.